his host. So the same way we wish you a warm welcome, you have to wish him a warm welcome. So thank you, merci. Mesdames et messieurs, nous avons deux conversations importantes aujourd'hui, l'une en rapport avec les infrastructures et l'autre en rapport avec le financement et l'investissement pour réussir nos zones économiques spéciales. Je voudrais inviter la très talentueuse et très brillante Raiso qui a été avec moi hier et qui va ouvrir la session. Merci d'accueillir Raiso, mesdames et messieurs.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Stéphane. Alors, comment allez-vous ce matin? J'espère que tout le monde se porte bien. Le cocktail s'est bien passé hier soir? C'est bon? C'est pour ça que vous êtes en baisse d'énergie aujourd'hui ou... Ne vous inquiétez pas, nous aurons la pause café très prochainement, juste après le premier panel. Alors, hier, on a pu entendre parler de la feuille de route, de la partie innovation technologique et skills development. We were able to also look at ways to facilitate intra-trade within our continent. So it is with great pleasure that we invite for the first panel today talking about infrastructure and roads corridors. We've got Mr. Yusuf Kone, Chief Regional Funds Coordinator of the African Development Bank that will be moderating this panel. Please help me welcome Mr. Kone.
Good morning, everyone, Excellencies. My name is Yusuf Kone. I'm the Chief Regional Fund Coordinator at the Regional Integration Coordination Office at the African Development Bank. I'm based in Abidjan, and thank you very much for inviting us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure development is the backbone of economic growth and economic transformation across Africa. It's more than concrete, it's steel, and as we gather under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area today, the development of regional trade infrastructure and corridors has never been more than critical. These corridors are just not transport routes, they are catalysts for integrations, investment, and industrializations. The African Development Bank Group has been at the forefront of this agenda, investing over 44 billion in the last 10 years to develop road network, ports, bridges, railways, and energy pools on the continent to improve regional integration. These investments are not just isolated investments. They are part of a strategic hand-to-hand approach to span project preparations, policy reform, co-financing, and activation of regional value chains. Corridors like Abidjan-Lagos, Lobito and North-South are being transformed into economic corridors, hosting special economic zones, attracting private capitals, and creating jobs at scale. Our conversation today builds on this momentum. We will explore how infrastructure and trade corridors can unlock Africa's economic potential by enhancing connectivity, reducing transport costs, and enabling value-added production. We will also address key barriers, non-tariff barriers, regulatory fragmentation, and the infrastructure financing gap, which still exceeds more than 100 billion annually. This panel will reflect on the promise of public-private partnerships, the transformative power of integrated planning across ports, logistics, and special economic zone, and how the corridor model well aligned with the ICFTA can deliver inclusive green and resilient growth. So let me introduce the different panelists. I would like to call Mr. Dileta Sultan Mohammed, who is the Director, Transport and Infrastructure Ministry of Infrastructure of the Republic of Djibouti. He is also the Director General of the Secretary General of this ministry. Mr. Dileta Sultan Mohammed, please, can you join us on the floor? Next is Mr. Angus Miller. He's a regional advisor at Trademark Africa. He's based in Nairobi. Please, can you join us? Ms. Dimitar Gian, she's Director of Custom Administration at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. Last but not least, Mr. Denis Muganga is the Director of Private Sector Investment, Northern Corridor Transit and Transport Coordination Authority. I think this panel will start by setting the stage, and I will like to give the floor to Mr. Denis Muganga, who is going to set the stage for like 5 minutes for this panel, and then we're going to the questions for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm Denis Muganga, Director for Private Sector Investment Promotion at the Northern Corridor Secretariat, based in Mombasa, Kenya. Thank you very much for this opportunity for me to share some insights on transport corridors, infrastructure development, the role of special economic zones, mostly focusing on their contribution to socio-economic development in our countries in Africa. First, I'll start with the Trans-Africa Highway. I'm sure most of us have heard about this project, considered as one of the major projects of the century, spanning across African countries, 18 to 30 countries connected through this highway, 60,000 kilometers, a budget of about $30 billion, and expected to be developed over about 10 years. The first phase was done. Unfortunately, we are progressing very slowly with so many challenges along the way. And the question therefore is, what are the issues? What's the problem in our infrastructure development on the African continent? What do we need to do as key players in developing infrastructure in our countries? And what's the role of the infrastructure that we are developing? As Northern Corridor, we try to address some of these issues, and our decisions are based on the needs of our member states. So we have technical committees within our member states who identify priorities that we need to focus on as we do our annual planning. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we want to be responsive to the needs of the countries that put us together. An AFDB report, and I think our moderator has already covered this, of January 2025, estimated the infrastructure investment requirement in Africa to be between 130 to 170 billion dollars per year. The question is, how much do we together contribute every year towards meeting this requirement? And it was found that we have a gap of about $108 billion every year. So how then do we close this gap? As Northern Corridor, we are looking at exploring public-private partnerships as an opportunity for us to be able to close this gap. So we focus on the role of the private sector in participating in public infrastructure development so that we can complement efforts of both government and private sector in meeting the infrastructure needs of our countries. On the role of special economic zones, we see these as critical infrastructure facilities, industrial infrastructure facilities that will help us to close the gap between imports and exports. When you look at the Port of Mombasa, for example, about 75% of the cargo that is handled at the Port of Mombasa, out of 40 million tons of cargo, 75% is imports. So only 25% exports. And out of the 25% of exports, you find that probably over 80% is empty containers going back. So you can imagine 6 countries or more using the port, but not being able to export as much as we import. So we look at special economic zones as facilities that will help us to invest, to produce, to add value, to package, and be able to export, so that we close the gap between imports and exports in our member states. So this is key for us. And for us to have zones that are efficient, that are effective, and that attract private sector investments, we must invest in off-site infrastructure. So we need different sectors to come together. We need the roads, we need the rail, we need the pipelines to connect to these zones. We also need energy to be able to power our zones. We need a focus on environmental sustainability for us to invest in industrial infrastructure that is sustainable and does not harm our environment. We need proper regulations that will help us to attract investments and give private investors the security and the confirmation that their investments are safe. So this is the kind of thinking that we want to spur across the African continent. And we are looking for partners to work together with us to be able to push forward this agenda so that we can develop the continent together. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And I think we're going to start now the discussions. Je voudrais m'adresser à vous, Monsieur Dileta Sultan. Vous êtes directeur de transport et infrastructure au ministère des Infrastructures donc, de la République de Djibouti. Alors, Djibouti, aujourd'hui, on l'a vu depuis le début de cette conférence, constitue une porte d'entrée stratégique pour le commerce dans la Corne de l'Afrique et au-delà. Et pourriez-vous partager donc avec l'audience des éléments de réflexion sur la manière dont Djibouti se positionne à travers ses investissements dans les infrastructures et aussi à travers son rôle donc, de promotion, de développement des corridors commerciaux régionaux?
Bonjour à tous. Merci, M. Koné, de m'avoir donné la parole. Pour répondre à votre question, je voudrais rappeler la position géostratégique de la République de Djibouti, qui se trouve au carrefour de 3 continents. Et comme vous l'avez précisé, Djibouti est la porte d'entrée de marché commun, le COMESA, qui a plus de 380 millions d'habitants. Et pour tirer profit justement de sa position géostratégique, la République de Djibouti a massivement investi dans ses infrastructures portuaires, routières, également la ligne ferroviaire, la nouvelle ligne ferroviaire qui relie Djibouti à l'Éthiopie. Et dans un premier temps, c'était justement de demander à la forte demande de notre voisin qui est l'Éthiopie, qui n'a pas une débouchée maritime. Mais Djibouti a cette ambition aujourd'hui de desservir, d'aller au-delà de l'Éthiopie et de desservir le pays des Grands Lacs. Voilà comment Djibouti se positionne dans ce sujet. Merci.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Je voudrais peut-être aller un peu plus loin avec vous dans sur cette question en particulier. Je crois que vous avez quand même bénéficié de certains investissements majeurs dans le développement des corridors. Je veux parler par exemple du corridor Soudan du Sud, Éthiopie et Djibouti, donc avec certains partenaires dont la Banque africaine de développement. Quelles sont selon vous les retombées, donc l'impact économique que ces investissements pourraient avoir, aussi bien pour Djibouti que pour les autres pays de la région?
Merci. Justement, Djibouti a tissé pas mal de partenariats pour justement développer et moderniser ses infrastructures portuaires. Et aujourd'hui, nous tirons plein bénéfice de ces investissements qui ont été investis. L'économie djiboutienne a un taux de plus de 5%, 7%. Donc, les résultats sont tangibles. Également, je peux également parler des projets reliant, justement, vous avez parlé de Soudan. Il y a un projet prioritaire de PIDA qui est de relier Djibouti à Addis, Sud-Soudan, Sud-Soudan, Kampala. Ça, c'est le projet phare de PIDA et de l'Union africaine. Et des études de conception et techniques ont été réalisées sur financement de la Banque africaine de développement. Et il était question justement en tout cas de compléter les chaînons manquants et de construire de postes frontaliers. Certes, nous avons de ports ultra modernes, hein, mais le port seul ne suffit pas. Le corridor doit accompagner. Derrière, il doit y avoir des politiques, des réglementations. Il ne suffit pas également de construire les routes, mais il faut également contrôler la surcharge. Donc, il est prévu également, dans le cadre de projets financés par la Banque mondiale, de mettre en place des stations de pesage. Voilà, en grosso modo, ce qui est en train de se faire. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dileta. Je pense que je vais aussi profiter de ma position, de ma casquette de chargé en chef de la gestion du fonds pour vous dire que la phase 2 du projet donc, de corridor Djibouti-Éthiopie donc, est également en cours d'instruction et que donc, la phase 2 de ce projet donc, pourrait aller jusqu'au financement cette année. Donc voilà, merci beaucoup. So, Angus Miller, how are you? Trademark Africa has been instrumental in improving, corridor efficiency across Africa. I know the experience in East Africa. From your perspective, what trade facilitation interventions have proven most effective in reducing time and cost across Africa?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the question. Just a little on Trademark Africa. We're a trade facilitation organization since being rebranded in early 23. We're continent-wide. The metrics that really sort of manifest us as an organization are time and cost of trade. That's what drives all of our results. But also a corridor approach. And what we mean by that is not just focusing on the transit and transport of goods, but increasingly facilitating economic and sustainable trade. The most effective, and I think the results that we're best known for, there are two that always stand out since our latest strategy was reviewed. The first is one-stop border posts, and the results come from EAC, where we've been working since 2011. Time to cross the border, on average, is reduced by 70%, a huge number, and an annual saving for the community of around $63 million per year. So that's the one-stop border post, and Giulietta and I are in constant conversations about bringing that model to Galafi first, we hope. The second is ports, and the port of Mombasa. Again, looking back at our first two strategies, the clearance time for trades reduced from an average of 11 days down to 3.5 days, another huge drop. And that is a result of an investment of around $90 million in infrastructure, such as feeder roads, and systems and processes to speed up the delivery of trade.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for this very insightful, comments. But given your experience and supporting trade and logistic reforms, I know all these, critical investment and also support that you are providing. So how can public and private partnership be better leveraged to accelerate infrastructure investment and also improve trade logistics across Africa?
Thanks again for the question. PPPs. Look, I think, everyone in this room knows that the days of large amounts of grant financing for infrastructure are behind us. Certainly the results that I was just talking about were grant financed over the last decade. So we need to, the need for and the demand for infrastructure is, certainly in this region, in the Horn of Africa, is massive. And we need to deliver against that unmet demand. And how do we fill those gaps? There are three areas I would dwell on. The first, which is the purpose of this discussion, is infrastructure, and to try and seize the opportunities around bringing in more private sector finance. It's challenging. I think some of us have been working in this industry for a while. We need to identify and locate the most suitable partners in the areas that we are trying to work. I live in Nairobi and have for many years, and many of you that will travel through Nairobi will be driving on the new expressway. There's an example of innovative blended financing, the use of tolling, for example, to bring in this infrastructure, which is essential for trade, for tourism, and the people of Nairobi. So that's one where innovation in financing large infrastructure has resulted. The other is probably in ports. I think that we can see one of the most impressive African ports just out of the windows here. We need to learn from experience in port management, experiences from across the globe, and ways in which port operators have improved efficiency. So that's the second one where we need to leverage PPPs and ideas. The third is around expertise. And we're talking about ZES, of course, over this couple of days, but promoting public-private partnership arrangements in the management of, for example, ZES and other parts of the trade suite of infrastructure needs, to leverage in private sector expertise, to bring in innovation and increasingly tech. So those are the areas, I think, where we need to think more wisely, consider who our partners are, and deliver against that financing deficit that we're all so aware of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let me come now to Demita. You're Director of Custom Administration at the IFCFTA Secretariat. From the perspective of custom administration and trade facilitation, how critical is infrastructure development, particularly at borders posts and along trade corridors, when it comes to advance the objective of the ICFTA?
Thank you very much. If I were to answer you in two simple words, it's very critical. Infrastructure is the backbone of movement of goods. And the AFCFTA is about creating a single African market. And when this African market is created, the goods need to move. If you can't move the goods efficiently from point A to point B, then you will still be at where you started from. So infrastructure is critical. Africa has one of the highest transportation costs in the world. The reason is, part of it is the infrastructure needed to support transport, to support the movement of goods. And so for us at the AFCFTA, we do realize that, how critical infrastructure is, and how critical corridors are to the implementation of the AFCFTA. Because for us, an efficient working corridor means we would have achieved the AFCFTA goals. And so understanding this, what we set out to do as the AFCFTA was then to carry out a corridor diagnostics. We did carry out corridor diagnostics about 6 corridors within the continent. And the reason for this was that we needed to understand what the bottlenecks were, what was the state of infrastructure, what is the flow of goods like, how easy is it then for these goods to move across borders from the point of entry to the point of destination. And so the AFCFTA adopted a corridor approach to trade facilitation. And one of the first steps it took then was then the diagnostics that we carried out. These diagnostics threw up a lot of things, and I can categorize them into 3. One is infrastructure, but this infrastructure is soft and hard, and you can't do without either. They are not, you have to have both. And then the second one is systems. You have to have systems. You build an SEZ, let's say that is the point of entry of goods into a market. If you then don't have systems that would enhance the movement of these goods all through the corridor to its point of destination, then you wouldn't also have achieved what you set out to do. And then the third is the people, the capacity. So you can have systems, you can have the hard infrastructure, you can have the soft infrastructure. But if you don't have people whose capacity has been enhanced to then utilize this infrastructure, utilize these systems, you'll still be back to ground zero. So what we have done at the AFCFTA is first the diagnostics that I have talked about. Second then is realizing that the infrastructure gap is not something that you can wish away, and it's not, the AFCFTA is not a revenue generating organ. And so what we then decided to do was also to talk to partners, to have conversation with partners about the infrastructure that is needed to then facilitate the movement of goods within the continent. The second thing we are doing is then to work on continental instruments that will facilitate the movement of goods. You remember I talked about soft and hard within the continent. In this regard, we are working on a single bond guarantee system, which then facilitates the movement of goods within these corridors. We have 16 landlocked countries in the continent, and their goods need to transit. And one of the things that then delay the movement of goods within these corridors is the transit bond. Because if you have to post a bond for every country that you pass, it has administrative delays. It also has cost implications. So we've worked on a single bond guarantee. The ministers recently adopted the draft regulation for the single bond guarantee. The next stage then is to then have the continental technology platform that will then be used to operationalize this single bond guarantee. In that regard also, too, we are working on an e-certificate of origin, a continental one, so that these goods won't experience these delays when they come to the borders just for the certificates of origin to be verified and checked. And so goods we can then save time also and the cost of the movement of goods. We are working on other instruments, but these two are two of the key instruments that we are working on to then ensure that the soft part of infrastructure along the corridors are actually enhanced. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You mentioned very critical issues, and especially with soft dimensions, also to complement the hard issues, but you also reflect on the bottlenecks. I want to come back to you on the issue of NTBs, the non-tariff barriers. You mentioned few initiatives, few instrument systems that you are promoting. So NTBs remain a major constraint to trade facilitation, to trade along the corridors, and as you know, is there any mechanisms that the ICFTA Secretariat is promoting, in order to identify, report, and eliminate these NTBs, especially where infrastructure and custom procedures intersect?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, the FCFTA launched the NTB reporting mechanism recently, and it's on mobile phones too. So there's an app that you can actually use to report NTBs. This has been launched, and currently we are doing sensitization and trying to get the stakeholders to then utilize this app to report NTBs.
Excellent, excellent. So Dennis, let me now look at the on the SEZ and the infrastructure synergies. So given your experience advising on special economic zones and port development, how can African countries better integrate the special economic zones development with trade corridors infrastructure to unlock industrialization and value chain growth under the ICFTA?
All right. Thank you very much. So from a corridor perspective, we look at special economic zones as part of the economic nodes that we need along our corridors. And therefore, our call is for first countries to be able to assess their competitive advantage, comparative advantage, look at what they have. Do you have the land? Do you have the technology? Do you have the human resources? Do you have the product that you desire to produce, add value, and export? Now, once this has been done, we need a comprehensive planning mechanism where we are able to undertake detailed studies to confirm viability and sustainability of these facilities once they are developed. And the operational model also has to be effective and efficient to make them sustainable. And then we move to the next stage where we get into a process of comprehensive urban planning so that we integrate the development of the zones with the development of all other facilities, both on land and in the sea. So when you are having your spatial plans, it's important to see how these are integrated with the development plans of the special economic zones. When you are doing your master planning for your ports, you need to see how do you integrate this to planning and development of the special economic zones. Then once you have a product, it's important also to market it. So market sounding strategies in a way that confirms sustainability, in a way that adds value to the producers, in a way that does not disadvantage the farmers that are supporting you to keep your zones running. So it's an integrated model that helps governments to be able to spearhead the process while allowing private sector investments that are attracted by existing policies that are enabling. So we need creation of an enabling business and investment climate in our member states so that we can be able to sustain these investments. And the issue of sectoral synergies is also important because you need ICT to support your zones. You need environmental conservation issues and perspective to support your zones. We are now looking at recycling. We are looking at green industrial parks. We are looking at sustainable zones. So how do we move towards this? And how do we develop policies and regulations that will help us to achieve this? So these are the issues that we consider when we are developing special economic zones program and advising our member states on the paths that they need to take. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. You mentioned a critical point, I think it's the private sector investment and the enabling environment. Can you please share, based on your experience, some successful models of or lessons learned in structuring PPPs, for example, for trade corridors development in your region?
All right. So from the Northern Corridor side, we have 6 member states: Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and Democratic Republic of the Congo. And zones and other investments are spearheaded by specific agencies within governments. When you look at a country like Rwanda, we have the Rwanda Development Board, which is responsible for managing both PPPs and special economic zones. So right from the start, you see that we have an agency that coordinates 2 aspects that are critical for investments and PPPs. So this already paves the way for coordination in terms of how you attract investors to come in and how you facilitate them and assign them to specific priority investment sectors already determined by the governments. In Kenya, we will have two different agencies, the PPP Directorate on the one hand and the Special Economic Zones Authority, but they work in harmony. And therefore, the sectors have already been defined. The investment climate has been created that is attractive to investors. Investors are coming in, identifying areas where they want to put in their resources within special economic zones or in other sectors of the economy. And then we have facilitating agencies that are working closely. We have the contracting agency that is responsible for that specific investment, supported by the PPP units created to support our contracting authorities so that they can guide investments through PPPs. And one thing I can also mention is we've been able to access support from under the umbrella of the European Union through an agency called the CONEX Support Unit. This unit is supporting our public agencies to develop the capacity to negotiate with private investors on PPP projects. We had realized that the private sector has an upper hand in negotiating for PPP projects, and our public staff may not have the technical skills to foresee a PPP process over the entire 30-year duration of a concession for a PPP project. So we came in with this support to be able to build capacity on the public sector side, on the economics, on the monitoring and evaluation of PPP projects, on knowledge management, on participation in the special purpose vehicles that are created for that purpose, among other areas, so that we make it more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Je vais revenir à vous, Monsieur Dileta. Alors, nous avons abordé un certain nombre de questions. Comme vous venez de l'entendre aussi, il y a cette urgence de faire face à certains défis, dont le défi de la coordination. Je voudrais donc sur la base de votre expérience, et quels sont les défis les plus urgents, selon vous, à relever pour parvenir à un alignement des politiques et des réglementations dans le cadre des projets d'infrastructure, transfrontaliers en particulier, et comment les pays enclavés peuvent contribuer à une coordination plus efficace au niveau régional. Bien sûr, vous pouvez vous appuyer sur l'exemple de Djibouti pour donner cette réponse, notamment en termes de coordination, alignement, harmonisation des politiques et des réglementations pour le fonctionnement des corridors transfrontaliers.
Merci, M. Koné. Et il y a pas mal de défis. Les défis sont divers et complexes. Mais dans un premier temps, il faut compléter les chaînons manquants parce qu'on ne peut pas parvenir à une connectivité régionale tant qu'on n'a pas suffisamment relié les États. Et je pense qu'avec les perspectives des PIDA, il y a pas mal de projets d'infrastructures qui sont énumérés, qui est de justement compléter les chaînons manquants dans un premier temps et de mettre en place des infrastructures transfrontalières, c'est-à-dire les postes frontaliers. Et également, après avoir construit la route, il faut également contrôler, justement, il y a une panoplie des réglementations qui qui doit accompagner tout ça, il faut harmoniser. Ça, c'est deux choses qu'il faut mettre en place dans les textes existent, et les mécanismes existent. Donc, à mon avis, c'est des choses qu'il faut mettre en œuvre le plus tôt possible. Et il y a, pour ce qui est du cas de Djibouti, certes, nous avons des législations nationales, mais si on va au-delà, il faut l'harmonisation de ces normes et de cette réglementation, même entre les communautés économiques. Hein. On trouve que dans les pays qui sont membres du COMESA, ils ont leur propre réglementation. Il y a l'EAC, il y a le SADC, et je sais que il y avait l'harmonisation de ces textes dans le cadre de la tripartite, que ce soit les gabarits des véhicules, que ce soit les normes relatives aux routes. Donc, il faut, de façon très rapide, harmoniser tous ces textes et, surtout, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, il faut compléter les chaînes manquants. Sinon, on ne parviendra pas à une connectivité ou à l'intégration régionale qui sont les objectifs principaux de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Et je voudrais juste compléter, juste pour dire à l'auditoire ce qui s'est fait à notre niveau. On ne se contente pas des ports. Hein. Il y a pas mal de corridors qui sont pour desservir. Tout à l'heure, je parlais de corridors qui va de Djibouti jusqu'à Kampala. L'idée, c'est d'aller au-delà. De l'autre côté, il y a le corridor nord hein, qui vient jusqu'au niveau de Kampala. Ça permettra justement de relier le corridor qui va de Djibouti, va relier le corridor central. Et ça poursuit. Hein. Après, il y a le corridor nord. C'est pour vous dire, c'est ainsi qu'on parviendra à une connectivité parfaite. Et pour ce qui est des infrastructures transfrontalières, il y a un projet d'aménagement d'un poste frontalier au niveau de Djibouti et l'Éthiopie, au niveau des Galafi. Il y a des études également qui sont financées par la Banque africaine pour le développement. C'est une étude de conception relative à la mise en place d'un poste frontalier au niveau des Galilées. Et une autre étude également est en cours de réalisation pour ce qui est de postes frontaliers qui sera construit entre Djibouti et l'Éthiopie du côté de Balhou. C'est pour vous dire un peu, Djibouti également est en train de se doter des infrastructures routières et des infrastructures transfrontalières également. Tout à l'heure, je vous ai parlé de la ligne ferroviaire, mais il ne suffit pas de, comme je le dis, hein, je me répète, il ne suffit pas de disposer justement uniquement des infrastructures physiques. Il faut derrière la politique, la réduction de temps au niveau des frontières, le goulot d'étranglement, tout ce qui est harmonisation de normes, de la réglementation. En grosso modo, voilà ce qui sont le plus urgent à mon avis. Merci.
Ah oui, et merci beaucoup. Je pense que vous avez été vraiment complet sur le sujet. Je reviendrai donc tout à l'heure vers vous pour un résumé, donc une dernière question pour votre takeaway. Mais d'ici là, so Angus, I want to talk now about inclusivity and the IFCFTA itself. So small traders, women-led businesses, lender countries, how can we design support inclusive, support or develop trade corridors to support and take into account the reality and the challenges faced by this category of stakeholders?
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean this is the people side. This is the people across the continent living in the borderlands regions. 4 issues really to get across. One essentially zooms in and the development of cross-border markets. Really focused on allowing cross-border communities to benefit from the CFTA rules and norms. We've got some good examples of this. The ones I know best are the border of Togwajale and also down on the Kenyan border of Mayale, of effective, efficient communities benefiting from cross-border market facilities, but also the systems, as you raised, to cross the border freely with limited volumes and values of tradable goods. The second one is the simplified trade regime. Again, absolutely critical to facilitate inclusive trade and to enable cross-border communities to trade. I think it's one of those COMESA rules and norms, and also in the CFTA, that has to be properly implemented. It's one of those issues that I've seen some borders where the hard infrastructure, the larger traders have been the focus of borders to the detriment of the local communities, and they've struggled to cross borders in the way that the COMESA rules and norms set up for the continent to look after and facilitate local people and their trade. Increasingly, the third one is around digital solutions for cross-border payments. In particular, there's a program called iSoccer, which I can talk at the coffee break with colleagues. And that enables cross-border payments, but also provides a platform for market information and other linkages. So there is a tech solution that is there at some borders that can be rolled out, again, regional, continent-wide. And I suppose the final point on borders in particular is around building trust and confidence, trying to understand that borders are not there just on the security side, but they are there to facilitate trade. And I think awareness-raising programs with the public sector officials doing their work at borders, but also the people that are trying to fulfill their livelihood ambitions, can be driven by bringing people together, the cross-border local administrations with the traders to build that trust and confidence to enable the borders to work for everybody in an equitable and inclusive way, which is the heart of your question.
Wow, thank you so much. I liked this approach of inclusivity and confidence between the stakeholders. So, Dimitra, as initiatives like the Trans-African Highways take shape, and how the Secretariat is working to ensure that also all member states, increasing, especially landlocked countries also, are not left behind, and that also small economies can benefit from these corridors. What are the key priorities going forward to ensure inclusive implementations of these trade corridors?
Thank you very much. You are talking about inclusivity from the point of being able to utilize the trade corridors. But then I want to add on to what he said about when we talk about inclusivity, especially factoring in the various groups, the women groups, the youth groups that actually trade a lot along our corridors. So from the AFCFTA point of view, we have a protocol on women and youth in trade, and we are trying to operationalize that protocol by developing a continental simplified trade regime. So the simplified trade regime at the continental level will look at thresholds, right? It will look at goods that are of particular interest to women and youth. Trade does not have gender, but but somehow the trade in itself has gender, because there are certain goods that are traded by women, and there are certain goods that are traded by the youth. When you see that, you see a little bit of bias, even though trade agreements don't have that kind of bias. So looking at the simplified trade regime from this point, so that there can be that inclusivity, so that when they approach border posts with their goods, they can have a more simplified ways of crossing. And then when you talk about the highways that are being developed, and then what the FCFTA is doing to ensure that all its state parties can benefit from it, we look at this from the point of the annexes on trade facilitation and transit. And so we do facilitate member states to then implement their obligations in these annexes in terms of the rules that govern the movement of goods. And then harmonization also comes in. State parties will really need to do a lot in terms of harmonizing their processes for cross-border procedure. It sounds very simplistic sometimes, but something as simple as the closure of the timing of the borders, right? Benin, if you shout from Benin, I mean, you could be heard from my mother's kitchen, but we have different time zones. And so you will be looking at the other side, but they have closed because it is 6 o'clock on their side, and then it might be 4 o'clock on your side, and you don't have harmonized closing times or working hours. And these are some of the little things that then unlock bottlenecks and then brings about inclusivity. Imagine then a trucker that approaches the border and he has been cleared on the other side, and then the other side has closed. So sometimes it can be as simple as that. It can be as simple as road markings. We are talking about now cross-border trade. So you are driving on the right-hand side. The other side is driving on the left-hand side. It can be something as simple as axle load weight, 0.5 kg, 0.5 extra. You will be meant to bring all the good luggage down to bring it to be the same with the requirements of the other side. It can be something as some of the standards. The standards need to be harmonized. They're actually really different across countries. So with this, if we set about then harmonizing some of these standards, you will realize that there will be inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your passion. So Denise, we are running out of time. I will give you 1 minute to respond to the following questions on policy and regulatory coherence. In your view, what are the most critical policy and regulatory bottlenecks hindering effective investment in cross-border infrastructure, and how regional coordination mechanisms such as REX or Transport Authority help address them? Quickly, 1-2 minutes. Maximum.
All right. Very quickly, because my colleague has also mentioned some of them. We have challenges with harmonizing transport policies, if I may start there. And I'll give a very specific example. Kenya has adopted high-speed weigh-in-motion systems for weigh bridges, while the other countries are still using manual weigh bridges. So you leave the port of Mombasa, your cargo is okay, you have weighed, you have recorded your weight, you run across the country, you get into Uganda, and the first weigh bridge you meet, you are told that you are overweight. And that's a serious issue on our roads. Yes. So for as long as that is not harmonized, there is a problem. We have a COMESA yellow card that allows our trucks to to cross the borders. It's an insurance issue for the trucks. It is not accepted in some of our member states. So if I have an insurance cover for my truck, but I get to the border and I'm told that, no, this is not recognized. You have to reinsure your car for you to get in. That's a big problem. So I think these are the issues. Then look at standards, say SGR development. Initially, I think the member states wanted to do an SGR from Mombasa all the way running across all the 6 countries. But then The Kenyan portion done, about 700 kilometers or so. As you wait for the next country, which is Uganda, to also develop their standard gauge railway, the sponsors changed. So this one is Chinese. The other one, I think, moved to Turkish investors. The standards have changed. So the question is, how do we connect? How are we going to operate this seamlessly? So these are some of the real-life challenges that we are facing. If you get let me call them pilots, a pilot from Mombasa, what do they do when they get to the border? Do they step down and hand over to the next one, or what happens? So these are some of the regulatory issues that we are looking at, including also PPP regulations, and also investment incentives. If you want a regional special economic zone, what happens? Assuming the zone covers 3 countries and the incentives are not the same, you find investments being skewed towards one country where the incentives are better than the others. So these are some of the challenges that we have, and we will need to harmonize if we are to attract investments together and develop our countries equally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think let's maybe give an opportunity to also have some intervention, reaction from the floor, so that we then come back for a conclusion. So, mesdames et messieurs, est-ce qu'il y aurait des questions ou des interventions? Nous sommes bientôt à la fin de notre panel, mais nous souhaitons quand même avoir l'opportunité de prendre quelques questions de la part de l'audience. S'il y en a, s'il vous plaît. Sauf si toutes les réponses ont été déjà très claires. Je vais demander à nos intervenants, chacun d'avoir 1 minute pour clore l'intervention. Donc, so dear panelists, just your final message. 1 minute each of you will give us a key takeaway in 1 minute. So we start by, yeah, please go ahead.
Bon.
1 minute, pas plus.
Okay.
Là, vous avez déjà épuisé 20 secondes. Donc,
D'accord. Bon, je vais être très bref. Je vais peut-être rappeler que la transformation de l'Afrique dépend des Africains eux-mêmes, hein, et de leur volonté d'agir collectivement. Donc, ceci n'est un secret pour personne. Donc, pour arriver à cela, je pense que nous devons agir collectivement et mettre le paquet, hein, pour parvenir à une intégration économique régionale. Voilà ce que je peux dire.
Merci beaucoup. Agir collectivement, ensemble, ça fera bouger les choses. Merci beaucoup. Oui. Final words?
Seeing as we're in the Horn of Africa, a kind of a regional thought to guide us, which is to use one agreed governance framework regionally to drive the trade connectivity agenda as a collective, getting away from these small, micro, bilateral agreements, but bring it together, one framework, a harmonized set of rules and norms for countries to move at the same pace. I think is critical.
Thank you so much. Dimita?
For me, it will be simply implement the AFCFTA. If you do, you would have done what he said. Yeah. Implement the AFCFTA. It brings all of us together. So the key word is harmonization. Harmonize the standards. One Africa, one African market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis?
Okay, my clarion call is for African countries to be able to put away their national interests and focus on development of regional cross-border infrastructure projects. This will enhance our competitiveness and also sustain socio-economic development for the whole continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Je voudrais à mon tour donc remercier l'ensemble des participants, l'ensemble des panélistes. Et donc, cher Stéphane, je te redonne donc la parole pour la suite et merci beaucoup à tous.
Merci.
Bonne suite du programme.
Merci beaucoup. Wait 1 minute. Thank you for merci. Very inspiring. I think we should have continental PPPs. That's what you're saying. I think we should have continental PPPs. At continental level, we have PPPs for roads, and if government change, we continue our PPPs. I mean, I think that's what we should do. We have the Continental Bank, we have the continental institutions, we have EFCFTA at continental level. We do PPPs, and then nothing changes. Government changes, priority changes, war comes, war goes, but we continue to work. I think that's, from my understanding, that's what we are expecting. And since we're in Djibouti with our new chairperson from Djibouti, I think this is a message we have to give here. Thank you. Put your hands together again for our panelists and moderators. And now I will invite you to stand here for the photo. Thank you for this great panel. And of course, when we are at such events, this energy to see Africa come together, it flows everywhere. And actually, it empowers us to actually work hard and harder to bring Africa together. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, one of the points that was covered in this first conversation is about financing. I think we're going to cover it right now. Yes, financing, okay. I want to make sure we have a conversation with one of our guest speakers online. I want to make sure we have established the connection. Madame Amelia, est-ce que vous pouvez m'entendre? Can you hear me?
Oui, bonjour, je suis là. Merci beaucoup. I can hear you well.
Je vous demande de patienter qu'on vous voit à l'écran. C'est super, on vous voit à l'écran, on vous entend dans la salle, vous m'entendez. Et je vais donc installer le panel et à cet effet, je voudrais appeler Raisso pour faire la transition vers le panel. Merci de la recevoir.
Merci beaucoup Stéphane. Comme vous l'avez si bien dit aujourd'hui, avec les décisions des corridors et des infrastructures, ne peuvent pas se faire sans mécanisme de financement. Et bien évidemment, ce qui ramène à la thématique de ce prochain panel, where we are going to be exploring investment opportunities as well as financial institutions. So for this one, I would like to invite His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador Areta Ali Ahmed, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the African Peer Review Mechanism, who will be moderating this next panel. Please help me welcome him.
Merci beaucoup, Excellencies, Mesdames et Messieurs, les dirigeants des institutions financières, distingués invités, chers participants. Bonjour et bienvenue à ce panel stratégique consacré à l'exploration des opportunités d'investissement dans les zones économiques spéciales et le rôle des institutions financières à Djibouti. Je voudrais avant tout demander aux panélistes de me rejoindre. Donc, Monsieur Sébastien, directeur de la BCIMR, s'il vous plaît, applaudissez-le. Et puis, Monsieur Ahmed de CAC Bank, aussi le directeur général. Je pense qu'il doit être là aussi. Et notre ami aussi, Abdelaziz. Bah, voilà, il m'est donné donc, il me choix et l'honneur de modérer ce panel. Donc, je m'exprimerai en français. Je peux passer à l'anglais aussi, mais surtout en français. Il a été dit pendant ces 2 journées que, inutile de le répéter, la place qu'occupe Djibouti et puis la possibilité qu'il y a vraiment de profiter de cette location stratégique de notre pays. On ne l'a jamais assez dit, on l'a toujours répété, mais la répétition est une vertu pédagogique. Donc, il est bon que l'on sache que Djibouti est un carrefour. Maintenant, il y a lieu de voir comment, en quelque sorte, profiter de cette possibilité que nous avons, que la nature nous a octroyée. Alors, que peuvent faire les hommes? Et pour ce faire, je pense que vous avez devant vous un certain nombre de responsables qui peuvent nous éclairer sur ce qu'il y a de faire, comment le faire, comment parvenir à faire que l'Afrique puisse aller de l'avant. En tant que membre du panel d'African Peer Review Mechanism, j'ai pu aussi apprécier combien l'Afrique aujourd'hui essaye de négocier ce tournant stratégique, ce tournant, n'est-ce pas, qui est très très important en mettant en place ce genre de structures qui vont, à mon avis, nous permettre de passer de la théorie à la pratique. Alors, parmi les leviers le plus promoteur à Djibouti, vous avez en Afrique, vous avez les zones, et plus particulièrement à Djibouti, vous avez les zones économiques spéciales conçues comme de véritables pôles de croissance et d'innovation, dotés d'infrastructures modernes, de régimes incitatifs dont nous avons parlé. Mais auparavant, je pense que nous avons aussi en direct Madame Amélie qui intervient des États-Unis. Peut-être qu'elle va essayer aussi de nous donner un aperçu, n'est-ce pas, en tant que responsable. Et donc, je voudrais aussi que vous l'applaudissiez comme vous avez applaudi d'autres aussi. Donc, aucune zone spéciale, mesdames et messieurs, ne peut pleinement jouer son rôle sans un écosystème financier solide et inclusif. D'où l'importance de ce dialogue qui met en lumière à la fois les opportunités concrètes, n'est-ce pas, d'investissement et le rôle stratégique des institutions financières locales et internationales dans la mobilisation des capitaux, la gestion des risques et l'accompagnement des investisseurs. Aujourd'hui, nous aurons l'opportunité d'écouter, comme je l'ai déjà dit, des experts, des acteurs institutionnels, des représentants du secteur privé qui partageront avec nous leurs analyses, leurs expériences et leur vision de l'avenir. Je vous invite donc à suivre avec attention ces échanges, à par la suite aussi poser vos questions et surtout à réfléchir collectivement à une question centrale. Comment faire des zones économiques spéciales à Djibouti un moteur de croissance inclusive, soutenu par un secteur financier robuste et accessible. Mesdames et messieurs, pour échanger sur cette importante thématique, nous avons autour de la table un riche panel de dirigeants et spécialistes du secteur bancaire et nous tenons à les remercier pour leur disponibilité en cette période particulièrement chargée pour les banques. Pour ouvrir ce panel, j'ai le plaisir de passer dans un premier temps la parole à Madame qui nous suit de loin et qui va donc un peu nous donner des indications par rapport à la discussion que nous aurons. Merci Madame. La parole est à vous.
Bonjour, merci Monsieur Ambassador pour me donner la parole, and thank you so much to the Secretariat for the invitation. I also would like to extend the thanks of Madame Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of the United Nations Trade and Development Board, for inviting us to participate in this panel. I don't know if you can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen with you now. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to bring two important topics covered in the conference. One is the role of foreign direct investment to meet not only the financing needs, but also the development needs of the continent, and how regional integration and special economic zones can play a role on this. The second is the role of special economic zones as an agent not only of investment facilitation, but also of, as I said, development goals in the continent. I just want to confirm that you can see my screen well, because I will continue with the presentation, Monsieur the Moderator. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to share with you is my entry point is the role of special economic zones. Very briefly, we had prepared a handbook at UNCTAD, which is basically a share of experience across the continent on how special economic zones can help policymakers and investors to develop such zones with the aim of attracting foreign direct investment, but also of achieving higher exports and creating jobs. I will not stop here because I only have 10 minutes. The report is available. I'm happy to share the link with you. We have helped important processes in the continent, including the treatment of special economic zones in the CFTA protocols. So I think this is an important entry point for the discussion. Then what I'm going to do, as I said, briefly to discuss some important trends in the context of the conference, then to discuss the role of special economic zones in Africa, especially in the context of regional integrations. As we heard from the previous panel, these are important entities, not only in terms of trade corridors, but also investment corridors. And finally, I'm going to discuss the best practices and lessons learned, and perhaps that can ignite the panel to discuss the role of private sector on these issues. So to start with, let me just discuss a little bit the major trends in terms of foreign direct investment in Africa vis-a-vis other developing regions. And as we can see here, Africa is represented by the orange line. Foreign investment flows into Africa have stagnated over the past decade. We see that inflows have been between 40 and 60 billion annually, and this only represent less than 5% of global flows. And if you compare with other regions, unfortunately, the region is lagging behind. And this mirrors the trends in trade. So basically basically most of the flows still are being attracted by Asia. As we know, Asia accounted for half of the flows of foreign direct investment globally, and continues to be a critical hub for global supply chain. So how can we increase this share of foreign direct investment into the continent? One issue that we have been discussing at UNCTAD is that these divergent regional trends underscore the development of different international production and supply chain networks. That's why, again, the importance of discussing the role of further regional integration in this context. And all this, what happened is that they widen the gap in development opportunities. So this is an issue that from the development perspective, it's important that we tackle it and also bring it to the discussions with the private sector and policymakers. But it's not all by news. We have seen that recently foreign direct investment to all regions in Africa have increased. Of course, there are some winners in this context. We saw that Last year, it increased by around 86%, the highest value ever recorded. But unfortunately, as I said, this is very skewed. This is mostly driven by a large single project deal, specifically in the case of Egypt. And basically, this is, as again, we cannot claim that it's widespread in the continent. But we have seen increasing projects across the different sub-regions. Now let me take 1 minute to put this in the context of Djibouti, since it's our host today, and for this conference and also for the Secretariat. I think, and I put this also for discussion of the panel, Djibouti is a strategic geographical location, basically a country which is at the crossroad of major maritime trade routes, position it as a key player in regional international trade and also investment opportunities. With the implementation of the AFCFTA, Djibouti stands to benefit significantly from increased intra-Africa trade, and this represents a wealth of opportunities, particularly in sectors such as logistics, infrastructure, telecommunications, and tourism. So basically, as I said, there are hopes, there are positive signs emerging, but again, it's very concentrated. If you allow me, I will show you also another piece of good news. This is, we at UNCTAD analyze the investment into what we call sustainable development goals sectors. So basically we look into major sectors. Unfortunately, data does not allow to look at the 17 goals, but we group them into major investment sectors. So they are infrastructure, agri-food system, health and education, water sanitation and hygiene, and renewable energy. So here we can see that renewable energy projects are driving SDG-related investment in Africa. We see the increase from the pre-SDG era, that is the first column, to the current period. I mean, we are updating this soon, and we see that projects have more than tripled in renewable energy. However, sectors that are important, critical for sustainable development, such as agri-food system and hence has implications for food security, the number of projects have decreased. So we see that the decrease in agri-food system was over 40%, and investment in infrastructure declined by 24%, mainly due to a slowing in non-renewable energy and telecommunication projects. So the energy transition is presenting a huge opportunity for investment in the continent, but we cannot forget about other critical sectors like critical infrastructure and agri-food system. And in our annual report, and also in a special report that we are doing on the role of public-private partnerships, we try to look at what are the structural challenges and risks that hinder investors into these sectors. And some of the issues that we point to is the macroeconomic risk, currency risk, and low expected returns and demand factors, high cost of capital, uncertainty in regulatory frameworks, and also often poorly designed PPP projects. As the previous panel said, we need to focus on these issues if we want to help countries to have what we call bankable, a pipeline of bankable projects. So this is something that I think is important, not only in the context of regional integration, but also how the different projects are executed and how they are implemented in developing countries. So to continue, just to finalize the trends part, so we see here who are the top 10 main investors in the continent. Of course, still developed countries are the lead investors in the continent, but developing economies are slowly catching up. We see more investment from countries like South Africa, Singapore, especially in issues related to fintech and technology, India. So developing countries are gaining ground. in this context. And this is also important in the context of regional integration to try to promote more South-South investment. And we know the role of Chinese investors, especially in the context of Belt and Road related projects, but also we have seen an increasingly diversified investment beyond traditional extractive industries. Unfortunately, I don't have much time to stop here, but one issue that, as I mentioned, is important to expand the focus beyond extractive and renewable energy to other type of infrastructure sectors. So moving on, I'm just, my computer is a bit stuck now. Apologies for this. Okay, so now just let me take a couple of minutes here to discuss the importance of special economic zones in Africa. We have shown, and in the report that I just mentioned at the beginning, the importance and the proliferation of special economic zones in Africa. If we compare to the 1990s, where there were around 20 special economic zones, now we are talking about over 250 and more are being created and are being designed. So this has been, I mean, the number has increased, as I said, and it remains the world region with the highest number of countries without ZES, however. So one issue here is that how this proliferation has taken place in certain countries and how we can make them across the border an entity of change. So, for example, an important issue is the type of zones and how this is placed in the context of regional integration. So we see that the majority of zones are private, over 40%, but there are a number of firms of them also that are operated as public-private partnership zones, and other are mostly, the majority are mostly public. But what is important here is that they are multi-sector. So, some of them are specialized. Of course, there are different definitions here. I will not stop here. Some are considered special parks, other industrial park. What matters is the positive increasing trend. And special processing zones remain the most important zones in the continent, and free zones are very prominent in countries like Egypt, Ghana, Morocco, which are the lead countries among others. But what is important is the governance models, as I said, and how the different models can help to overcome some of the challenges that we have identified. So this is for the conference, I think is important, and how can we use them in terms of diversification? For example, there is only 10% of special economic zones in Africa appear to be specialized, meaning that they focus on specific sectors like services or specific industries like garment, electronics, or GVC-related activities, for example, research and development centers. And this is where we see also a wealth of opportunities, not only to help in terms of economic diversification, but also skill upgrading and other development goals. As I said, there are specialized, that are like world-class, like the Morocco, Tangier zones, the Technopolis in Rabat, and others that can serve as example to other countries. And one important also example that we have studied is the use of zones as logistic hubs. For example, Mauritius and the Luba Freeport in Equatorial Guinea. Those are examples that could be also replicated across the continent. Okay, so just quickly, what in terms of governance policy, this is one of the issues that we have been also studying and trying to share best practices, is that what are the most used policy tools and instruments. Of course, in terms of special economic zones are mostly fiscal incentives and special custom regimes, investment protection, investment facilitation, and so on. But But really, when we look at the requirements and the expectations for the private sector, mostly the most important one is the establishment requirements, the ex-ante investment. And again, just echoing what the previous panel said, the importance of coordination and coherence of policies here shows that the pre-establishment is very important. And increasingly investors, because of the investors' reputation, are also very concerned about the expectations to contribute to development goals beyond just facilitating the investment. And of course, performance requirements are important in terms of the return to investment. So quickly, we all know the potential benefits and the range of benefits of special economic zones, and especially what we call the static benefits, which are the sine qua non, is the attraction of foreign direct investment, increased exports, and employment creation. But increasingly, and we have many policymakers and managers across the room today, the indirect benefits also matter, and that's what we call the concept of sustainable development-oriented goals. Zones is the issue of skill developments, industrial upgrading, and broader socio-economic development, including environmental goals. So when these new zones are created, these are the issues that we want to keep in mind.
Excusez-moi,
yes,
madame. Excusez-moi. Donc, voilà, vous nous avez donné une photographie de la situation de l'ordre général. Donc, merci à vous. Et on va essayer. Merci beaucoup. Donc, on va essayer de faire que aussi les panélistes puissent compléter ce que vous aurez déjà donc démontré par A plus B. Donc, je suis obligé. J'aime pas couper les dames, mais je suis obligé de passer aux panélistes.
J'ai compris. Si vous me donnez 1 minute juste pour finir, je serai comme ça, on peut set the stage pour la discussion. Just 1 minute. To conclude, so basically what we think in terms to how to attract investment using special economic zones and other type of partnerships is that countries need to play to their strength and also type outside experience and partnerships and get the full benefits, especially the dynamic benefits that your countries and the continent has. Thank you very much. I'm happy to stay for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, madame, pour cette très pertinente intervention qui donne des idées claires sur ce qu'il y a de faire pour avancer ensemble. Donc, je passerai la parole au directeur général de la BCI, qui est aussi le président de l'association des banquiers de la place, donc de Djibouti, mon ami Sébastien. Donc, la première question que je vous pose, c'est comment, étant donné tout ce qui a été dit, tout ce qu'on a pu voir ces derniers jours et même à l'instant même, comment les institutions financières, n'est-ce pas, perçoivent-elles leur rôle dans le soutien à l'investissement à Djibouti? Ça, c'est une première question. Pour pouvoir un peu gagner du temps aussi, je vous poserai en même temps une deuxième question qui porte sur les types d'options de financement disponibles pour les investisseurs, n'est-ce pas, cherchant à entrer sur le marché, et comment ces institutions peuvent-elles soutenir la croissance des entreprises de la région? Merci bien.
Merci Ahmed. Bonjour à tous. Ravi d'être là parmi vous. N'hésitez pas s'il y a des questions. Moi, j'aime bien que ça soit vivant, si tu me le permets. Mais très simplement, et pas seulement pour la question des zones économiques franches, les banques à Djibouti, et je prends ma casquette d'APEC, notre devoir, je crois, c'est d'être des facilitateurs, au sens large du terme. Être un facilitateur, ça veut dire beaucoup de choses, mais si on veut être un peu précis, la première des choses, c'est de rassurer les investisseurs sur la marge des affaires à Djibouti. C'est important d'avoir ce dialogue avec les investisseurs étrangers en montrant des exemples de succès. Ils sont nombreux. Je pense que la deuxième chose qui nous revient dans ce rôle de facilitateur, c'est d'ouvrir notre carnet de contacts On est appelé, avec mes camarades banquiers, dont Ahmed est un digne représentant ici aujourd'hui, à avoir des contacts réguliers avec toutes les entreprises, avec les clients particuliers, avec les établissements et les institutions publiques, avec l'État. Et donc, fatalement, dans un petit pays comme le nôtre, on a tout de suite accès et de nombreux contacts qui peuvent être utiles. Et ça, c'est très utile pour les investisseurs étrangers quand ils n'ont pas eux-mêmes accès. Je pense que c'est bien qu'on puisse les y aider. Troisième chose, évidemment, on va quand même faire notre métier. On est là pour prêter. Donc, lorsqu'il y a des investissements, c'est évident, on regarde les dossiers, et tous les dossiers, et on essaie d'accompagner le vrai besoin du client. D'ailleurs, souvent, on essaye de le faire cheminer jusqu'à la bonne décision en matière de financement. Bien sûr, il faut faire en sorte que la banque au quotidien ne soit pas un problème, hein, parce qu'une perte de temps sur ce sujet-là pour l'investisseur, c'est pénible, mais ça, on est tous à l'aise avec ça. Et enfin, dernier point qui me semble important et intéressant, on peut aussi, pourquoi pas, regarder un certain nombre d'investissements sous l'angle du capital. C'est-à-dire qu'il n'est pas interdit, au sens de la Banque centrale de Djibouti d'ailleurs, et du règlement de nos licences, de s'intéresser en capital, en association avec un investisseur étranger, à des opérations d'investissement ici à Djibouti. Je pense que c'est aussi le rôle des banques. Ahmed pourra me contredire s'il ne le pense pas comme moi, mais c'est aussi le rôle des banques, je crois, de se poser la bonne question. Est-ce que nous, on a vocation à être des associés dans des investissements étrangers? Pour aller vite sur la deuxième partie, parce que c'est un peu technique, les financements, c'est pas toujours facile, et que ce soit une zone franche ou pas zone franche, c'est un peu les mêmes sujets. Voilà, ici à Djibouti, tout est possible. Il n'y a pas un seul financement que je faisais ailleurs dans le monde que je ne peux pas faire à Djibouti. Tout est possible. Donc c'est quand même très positif. On fait du financement moyen terme, on finance des équipements, on finance de la construction, des travaux, et dans les zones économiques, de temps en temps,